All right, well, welcome everybody. It is 6 o'clock, so I will call to order this special meeting of Thursday, February 2nd, 2023. Please join me for a flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Assembly of the City and Borough of Sitka would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional first people of Sitka. With gratitude, we proceed on Tlingit Ani. Sarah, roll call, please.
Mayor Eisenbeis,
Present.
Mr. Mosier,
Here.
Ms. Duncan. Here. Mr. Yestad,
Here.
Mr. Christensen. Here. Mr. Pike
Here.
and Ms. Carlson.
Here.
Any correspondence or agenda changes this evening? Brings us to persons to be heard. This is public participation for any item off of tonight's agenda, not to exceed 3 minutes for any individual. Is there anyone to address the assembly off of the agenda this evening? Seeing none, that will bring us to new business, item A. So tonight we're here to have a discussion direction on the fiscal year 24 municipal budget, focusing on the general fund, specifically some new initiatives and then significant changes from our current budget. So in talking with Melissa earlier in the evening, everything is laid out here in kind of a, this is the status quo that we had from this last budget, and then some resource proposals and some changes for consideration for this upcoming year. What's going to be really important this tonight for setting up the budget as they continue forward is if the assembly sees items that they are not excited about continuing forward in the budget, those are the ones we really need to nail down this evening and get those eliminated, or continue to have some more discussions on those as the budget goes forward. So I do see some staff in the audience. Thank you, John, for having some people here to answer some of the questions on some of the new items. I think that's it for me, John.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. This will kind of follow the same routine as it did last year. This is going to be just looking for some big picture guidance from the assembly on the general fund. We've put together, I don't even really want to call it a first draft. We've just put together some decision points. And as we get into those decision points, I at least want to give you kind of the structure we used this year. So as you know, we passed a strategic plan. And in that strategic plan, we've got a group of goals. And those goals have specific actions tied to them. So this budget formulation, we tried to tie any new initiatives from the status quo to individual action items. To do that with staff, we created, we call them RPs, resource proposal forms. So if there were any departments that wanted to do new initiatives or they wanted to tackle one of the things in the strategic plan, they would put in a resource proposal form to tell us what they needed to do that specific action item. We based our priorities on the guidance we got from the assembly after the adoption of the plan. Remember, we did that online on the screen. What are your closest things right now? So we use those to help guide our budget build. It was last Friday that Melissa and I spent the entire day in the conference room going through a stack of resource proposals and putting them in the right buckets. Some made the cut, others didn't. But those are just recommendations from me, and you should have those RPs in front of you kind of built together. I don't want to steal too much thunder from Melissa's presentation. So she'll walk through the slideshow, and there are some times where I'll jump in and kind of explain some of the topics that we go through. So again, any items that are a hard no from right now, let us know. Or if there's anything that we missed and we need to add in, we're happy to do that. Or if there's any items that we've been doing for a few years that you don't think make much sense, then feel free to offer that up as well, and we'll shift accordingly.
And then for the assembly's benefit, as in the past, if you have questions, comments throughout the process, please just jump in. Don't wait for me to acknowledge kind of an open flowing discussion this evening.
All right. And just to reiterate what Stephen just said, this definitely should be a conversation, jump in, interrupt me as we're going. We want to make sure that we're addressing any questions or concerns. So to start out with, some of the key elements. So we went through a very similar process last year. Our goal is to come forward with a draft administrator's budget that shouldn't need significant changes. So we're trying to get feedback on anything that is different from basically our core services. So this is everything outside of our core services. So last year, we had 171.4 FTEs. So last year we added quite a number of FTEs, and then we identified a number of areas that needed additional effort. So that was focusing on asset management and risk management as an organizational priority, sustainability, code enforcement, tourism, focus on federal funding, knowing that opportunities were coming out and being poised to take advantage of that. Preparing for growth in Sitka, and then kind of as a separate, moving forward with the Parks and Recreation program. Some of the big challenges last year were high levels of inflation, very difficult coming out of the pandemic to project sales tax, and then state funding. Originally, we thought it was going to be more of a challenge than it was. It was a good year for the state. And that was, the state actually stepped up in many areas last year. So looking forward to FY24, we're flat on FTEs. So there's no net change to the number of FTEs being proposed. And in large part, the focuses are still very much the same. Kind of the new area, an area that was newly identified in the strategic plan was housing. The net cost, so the total net cost to the general fund of all of the approved proposed expenses is $820,000. You'll see higher numbers in here, but in some cases, the expenses are associated with a revenue or have a source of funding. So that net cost of everything in here is $820,000. We're seeing a lot of the same challenges as we did last year. So we still have inflation. It is beginning to slow, but we're still dealing with those challenges, particularly when it comes to capital. Our sales tax coming in, we're exceeding significantly our budget projections for this fiscal year. So, right now we're anticipating, based on the first half of the year, coming in at least 2 million ahead of projections. So again, I always try to, with the tax projections, the revenue projections, I try to be conservative. I didn't know I was being quite that conservative when I put the budget together. But that's good news, but it's still challenging. We have, possibility of a recession coming up, and because we're still seeing growth, and then combined with the other economic pressures, it makes projections very difficult. We're expecting the state funding scenario to be a bit more challenging this year. Even with the school funding, it looks like there's a good chance there might be more school funding, but that puts more pressure on our budget, because then we know the schools are going to request more from the city as well. So it's not an election year. Funding might be harder to come by, and it's been very hard to hire people.
And we're up against the potential debt ceiling and the federal government as well, and that tends to lead to government shutdown threats. So Melissa and I have talked. That's what I'm very, very worried about right now. So a rainy day fund is helpful.
So for FY24 budget process, we kind of shook things up a little bit this year. We had, usually our kickoff is an email telling people when they have to have their budget into the system. This year, we actually all got together And we did a kickoff meeting in this room and kind of did some training and went through the new resource proposal forms. We're still guiding people to do a zero-based budget. So, we're not taking what we did last year. We're stepping back and saying, okay, to keep this level of service, what do I need to spend? We will be, when we come to discuss capital projects with you, we'll be looking at risk scoring, which we started doing last year, and we're taking that further. Any change from the status quo, you have a packet of resource proposals. So those forms have been filled out, and what those forms are, they're making it very clear how that resource ties to moving us forward with our strategic plan, because we shouldn't be doing anything that doesn't tie to our strategic plan. And it also kind of gives information. Is this project scalable? What happens if we don't do it? So it helps us make decisions on that. And then, as John said, we had an internal review process. So we went through all of these, made recommendations. All of them are in the packet, including the ones that were not approved to be recommended. So all of the resource proposals have been put into the 5 goal areas of our strategic plan. So we have quality of life, communications, sustainability, infrastructure, and service. And we'll be going through each goal area. As we go through, if no one has any questions or anything, I'll go through and briefly explain what each item is. And if you don't like something, we can discuss it. If you really like something, we can just discuss it. My goal is to come out of this with guidance from the assembly. We don't need to have formal motions, just enough direction to know if we need to make any changes or not include something in the budget. So the first item we have here, which most, in general, we're not discussing capital. This doesn't hit the general fund operating, it hits capital, but it's a big new area. It's not fixing our current infrastructure. So that's why this is on the list today. So this is a housing development study. And the total cost it could be up to $750,000. We have $330,000 available in our Benchlands Capital Project Fund, and we'll be seeking grant funding for the project as well that could reduce the need over that $330,000. And once we do this, if we were to move forward with developing land, there could be additional significant cost. This was an area that was identified as a priority in the strategic plan. Amy is here, so if anyone has questions on this, which is our bigger ticket item, she can come up.
If I can, I'd like to jump in, because we've been talking about this at the Planning Commission. And then I've also personally been talking to Amy about this. So, and I'm sure Amy will speak to it better than I can, but essentially we've got 3 places where we can possibly expand housing. And the Kramer Avenue, everybody knows about, the land up above the high school, and then possibly the end of Indian River. Am I forgetting any? No. Okay. And especially the land above the high school is extremely interesting. It's got utilities nearby. It's got the high school nearby. It's got roads that already lead right up to it. But we can't just open that up without a lot of work. We don't know for sure what's underneath the ground. We don't know how much of it is wetlands and so forth. And the same holds true to a certain extent at the end of Indian River, although that is state land right now. We're, they're looking at asking the state for it. The land above, so this would be the first step to doing that. And I know what the hope is, excuse me, is that once we get this study, get this work done, and we can start to get an idea of how much it would cost to develop it, we can hopefully go to the feds, the state, anybody and everybody, and ask for help doing that. And it's a little bit of a different model than we've done in the past, where we say, okay, we'll sell to a developer and they'll do all that work. And here we're thinking that, well, we could maybe reach out to outside entities and get a lot of the development work done to make it affordable land. And then also to have a little more control over how the land is laid out and things. It's pretty important, and it's something that I doubt any of us will see the end of this process on our current times on the assembly, but it can make a huge difference. I mean, just the land above the high school is 60 something acres. And we kind of back of the napkin that, and that could easily be 100 lots. Conceivably significantly more than that, depending on the layout of the land and the size of the lots and things, but it could be as high as, 175. Unlikely to be that high, but this is the first step, and this is the first thing I've seen in quite a while that could actually make a difference on providing something approaching affordability in Sitka. So I think this is pretty important. And I'm sure Amy has a lot more backup than I do, but I kind of got excited about this when we started talking about it.
Yeah, I was going to ask too, Mr. Mayor, if she could come up. While she's coming up, I'll just second what Tor said. I think several members have been meeting with Amy. I know I have as well, and basically everything that Tor said kind of summarized it. But I think it's important for the public who are listening to be able to understand this and hear from Amy too. This is kind of, instead of being reactive and just kind of socking away little spots here and there, to actually do a strategically planned, proactive approach to trying to tackle housing in Sitka. And so, Amy.
Sure. Amy Ainsley, Planning and Community Development Director. Thank you for having me up. To me, the sort of core tenets of kind of getting our arms around developing any city land for housing is we need to know what is our best opportunity set, how much land is truly developable, what will be the cost of bringing that development, and how much housing do we get out of it. Those are sort of the core primary questions that we need to be able to answer before we can move forward with the next steps of actually pursuing development and opening land, creating a disposal plan, creating, subdivisions and all of those things. We really need those core questions to be answered first. And so that's the goal of the way that the resource request was structured to structure this study. There's a heavy emphasis in terms of putting the study together when we, if we do get the approval to move forward with it through the budget, when we structure the contract looking for those support services, there's going to be a heavy emphasis likely on sort of geotechnical expertise and civil engineering. And again, that's how we answer the questions of, where are the wetland, what's the wetland delineation looking like? Where is landslide risk? Where do we have flood zones? Where do we have soils that are, incompatible or unsuitable? And then how do we sort of develop around those things, and what are the cost of roads and utilities and all of those important questions that we need to be able to answer. There was a question that's a part of all of the resource proposals, which is, can you scale this request down? And there is a way to scale this request down if it's deemed preferable to do so. And you could study individual areas one at a time. This larger ticket item is intended to cover multiple study areas at once. And I think there are some advantages of taking that approach. First, I think in total, you will likely spend less on that study money. So instead of contracting those services separately over time, having them combined under one contract, it gets done while you have a team here in town, they hit multiple locations, all that stuff. You're likely to save money as opposed to doing those separately. But the other important part there is when you study one area in isolation, you always have the lingering question of, was there a better opportunity we should have gone after instead? And if the one area that you started with doesn't pan out, you are now, a year or two behind in moving the next area forward. And so given the ranked importance of this particular action by the Assembly when you reviewed the strategic plan, to me, at least just from my interpretation of how highly this priority was ranked, it felt to me that there was that sense of urgency that we do want to cast a wide net so that we know our opportunity set early on. So that's why the total amount was included in this resource proposal.
There was one other item that I forgot to mention, that we can recoup this when we sell the land. I mean, just like like when we sold the hospital, we took the money that we spent getting the appraisals and things back out before we put it in the permanent fund. And we can do that again here. So possibly, I mean.
So also another thing for the public and Assembly members to understand, this isn't just some like little report. I mean, this is a pretty comprehensive report that could help us to develop planning and all the development costs, so that theoretically, say this project, is complete, we can say, okay, next budget season or whatever, I don't know how long this will take. Say, okay, well, here's a spot of land, we're going to develop this. We might give some to, or we might sell some at a higher price to help pay for the development costs of other areas, and designate certain areas for certain types of housing. So it's a big ask at first, and I think it's a lot when it comes, hits the press and everything. I would like people to know that this is a very in-depth report that will help us take real action to really help address the housing problem in Sitka.
Yeah, absolutely. The information that we would gain through this study, both I think is very informative for your disposal plan. So if you even think about just the physical characteristics of a area of land, you might have some parts of it that are going to be suited well to high density development, that maybe you want to do that at more affordable rates, whereas you might have some areas of that same area that maybe have some challenging topography, and so you want to do big view lots and you sell those at market price to help offset your cost of development. Having this kind of detailed work on the land will inform your disposal strategy so that you can help the financing of the entire development. The other aspect as well is having this level of detailed information will make us, if there are grant opportunities out there, we'll be much better suited to pursue them, because the granting agencies will want to know the specifics of how much housing are you creating, how much of it is going to be affordable, and those are the questions we want to be able to answer. Similarly, if we are going to approach other agencies such as the state about contributing either money or land, having a very solid plan of this is what we will do to create community benefit with either the funding or land or any other contributions, we have that information. So this study helps to pay off both the development itself, but as well can pay off in other ways by helping to secure funding or other support.
Another part of this conversation that I think is important is that it's not just housing development and availability, but we always talk about affordable housing as well. We've seen time and time again that we could just identify a chunk of land and sell it off. But the person that we sell it to, person or organization that we sell it to, is going to have to do these exact same things. And then that drives the cost of the land up to the person that wants to then buy it and put a home on it. So this is one opportunity that we can probably take on some of that, help identify it, help plan it out, and bring that overall, hopefully bring that overall cost down to the person that's eventually going to live there.
So I just have a question about time frame. So if we started this, when would this be available, or when do you expect it to be done? How long does it take?
The funds would not become available until July 1st, as this is going into the FY24 budget. I would anticipate 12 to 18 months, most likely.
And that would be in best interest of like one contract with a firm somewhere that does all the things, or they would have geotechnic sub people that they would find Sitka based, or what would your ideal RFP look like for this?
Yeah, ideally, we would have at least a principal that would then manage, subcontractors. So you might have a principal that's a planning firm that would then have subs for civil engineering and for geotechnical. But we would like to manage it under one contract. But, for this kind of, like land use, master planning type work, it's very common for us to get, a multi-team response. So I would anticipate most firms would probably do that, but
Do
yeah,
that?
we'd have to see.
And all the way through to considering utilities or stress on utility grid. So if there needs to be an additional electrical substation that goes somewhere, it would be that robust of a study.
That's the intent. And that's part of the reason why the dollar amount is higher because, again, talking about scalability, you could do a much less expensive study, but you may not get those types of questions of, you're going to have the lingering question of like, well, this looks like flat ground, but what's the landslide risk? Or we have roads nearby, and so there's electric nearby, but do we truly, do we need another substation, and how does that pencil out with the, with the cost? And so the more money we put into the study, the fewer of those sort of unknowns are
Mhm.
hanging out there, and therefore we have more certainty in moving forward with the development.
Mhm. Would it be stuff like all the potential like dead end roads around town? Like what would it look like to build something or spur something off of all the city dead end roads we have? Or is it just large chunk areas that we're most interested in?
I'm primarily focused on, and this might be something that, whether the planning commission, I would imagine the planning commission would likely be kind of the steering body,
Okay.
public steering body around land selection for the study.
Mhm.
My recommendation is that we focus it on large parcels.
Okay.
Again, if you're going to invest sort of significant time and resources, your potential for return in terms of, how much housing you're able to add should
Mhm.
be commensurate. So my recommendation is that we pick key or sort of prime areas that are
Mhm.
large and can produce, a significant amount of housing, as opposed to, kind of a broad study that you're, trying to look at all of your infill opportunities, but then not getting the level of detail that you need to move forward.
And traffic studies and all the things associated with more people in a specific space.
I don't know that at this level you would necessarily be doing traffic studies. You're trying to get that at least preliminary estimate for your major roads and utilities. More specific design on your subdivision and how you want to lay out feeder roads or or cul-de-sac area, all the kind of the smaller network of road work, I think is probably too detailed to fall under this initial study.
Uh-oh, it's my turn. Have quite a few questions and comments on this one, and I think reasonably so, as it is the bulk of the ask tonight. So hopefully my questions are helpful for assembly members as well. All right, so Amy, everything you've said on this one, it's not wrong. Nothing you've said I disagree with, but I have questions that are lingering in my mind that need to be answered, and they're coming from a much more simplistic view of this, I guess. So just, questions on why we don't head down that path. Like I said, you're not wrong, but I guess a question that I have that leads into some others is, why is it us doing this? Why are we the ones taking this step where land could be sold to a developer to take all the steps? It was stated earlier that if we do it, it can make the land cheaper. If we sold a large parcel for a very inexpensive amount, I think we kind of get to that same point of inexpensive land. Of course, deed restrictions would have to be on there so that we get the desired results, because once it's out of our hands, there's very little we can say on that. So that's a kind of a lingering overriding question on this. I'm not a fan of studying land that we don't currently own. in regards to Indian River parcels. I do believe, however, that Indian River is the future to this town. So that is an extremely key area. However, I have very little assurance that the state will transfer any of that land. If you have higher assurances, then perhaps that could be included. But I think we could potentially spend a third of this amount of money or more on land that we might not ever get. And that kind of scares me throughout the process. Mention that as far as studies go, and this is what makes it a little bit harder for me, is that we've heard of land being studied in the past. In my time on the assembly, I've seen land be studied, and it's still just land. Now, I have no doubt that you've gone back in the past and looked at all those studies and still determined that this to be a reasonable process, that you don't have the information you need. But I'm really, really fearful that we're again going to study land and it's just going to be land. Was a similar process like this followed on the Georgeson Loop and Eliason Loop subdivisions? Are you aware?
Eliason Loop was a private development, so wouldn't have had a similar process. I don't believe that quite the same level of work was done on Georgeson, but I will say I'm not as familiar with the background work on Georgeson.
So Eliason Loop was a completely privately funded, privately done.
It was private land that was subdivided by a developer.
Okay, so something that we could head down the path of, we simply sell the land and they do all the work.
That is an option.
Okay. I think that's the crux of my comments here, but I guess to help put me at ease, like I said, you're not wrong in this process, but why us? Why are we doing it? Why isn't private enterprise doing this if they were able to acquire the land?
Sure. The first answer is, I don't know that we have been very successful in this strategy in the past. I think we have tried this strategy and it has not brought a lot of fruit to bear in terms of affordable housing. We end up kind of just creating a lot of market price lots that get absorbed at standard market prices. And I don't know that a lot of our efforts have resulted in affordable housing. If the goal is affordable housing, we may need to have a stronger role in that. And I think that's reflected by the level of interest from the community in the strategic plan when it came to housing. I think that kind of answers the other part of the question of why us, is that the community asked us to take a more active role in housing. These are our lands. We are one of the more significant landholders in Sitka. And so if we want to steer that development and want to see it move, quickly, then we could take a more active role in developing it. We could take the approach of just disposing of it and letting somebody else do that. But again, I don't know that we have a strong track record of that panning out in terms of higher density or more affordable housing. And if it kind of comes down to, what level of stewardship does the city want to have over its lands?
In your opinion, could that be mitigated with deed restrictions and covenants on the property? I think that's more of a Brian question, but.
I mean, I'm prepared to answer that. The tough part is, at what point do you introduce those deed restrictions? So let's say, for example, right now we have a 30-acre parcel. If you want to just sell that off right now at this point, you could put a deed restriction that would cover that whole parcel, but maybe wouldn't be appropriate for that whole parcel. Perhaps it makes sense that part of it is deed restricted for affordable housing, but part of it should be sold at market. And that's what it would take to bring it, to financially be able to bring it to market. So making those types of decisions this early on, before you have a better sense of what the land can support, I think is really challenging to steer an outcome that would both bring the kind of benefits that we would want to see from those restrictions, as well as giving enough flexibility to a developer that it's not going to be an issue down the line when they try and bring things to market.
Okay, thank you on that. I can very clearly tell that you're, I kind of tried to poke holes in your request for resources there, and you're very confident in all of your responses. I think you have a desire to see this through and a knowledge behind it on why you're going down the direction that you're going. So that gives me confidence in going forward. I can't say that I'm 100% still on this path, but if we go down this path, I believe that Amy's the correct person for that.
If I might, sorry, I mean, I know that if you, I think I could give a pretty good answer to why us. And that is, it kind of boils down to control, in that if we do it, we can make 7,000, 8,000 square foot lots. If a private developer is going to do it, in order to maximize it, you're going to have bigger lots and more expensive. We have funding source available. We have potential funding sources that a private developer does not. We can reach out to the state. We can reach out to the feds. We have, that is something that a private developer can't and probably shouldn't be able to do. And we can make a planned unit development, which would probably make the most sense for some of these larger parcels, where we can, in a sense, spot zone and say things like, we did discuss at the time that, like, there can't be short-term rentals on this area anywhere on the, or that's the kind of thing we could do with a planned unit development. And that obviously a private developer can't, wouldn't want to do or wouldn't be interested in doing. We have different goals than a private developer would. And I think we can come out of this, if we break even on it, we're happy. And no developer is going to work under those circumstances. So,
Mr. Mayor, I also have more comments too. Just kind of answering, I think Amy answered well about why us. And I agree with this wholeheartedly, is because the people, I believe, in the comp plan and then the strategic plan have asked us to. We hear about people talking about affordable housing. If we just give it to a private developer, they're just going to develop it for the most profitable thing, which is appropriate for a private person trying to turn a profit. But that's not what we're interested in. We're interested in a bigger picture city kind of, I say this is a city planning kind of thing, where we are, like Tor said, coming up with planned unit developments where, I see a vision where we have, like, say, a certain spot, we do some at higher price that we can sell to developers so they can charge, a lot, develop it, or I don't know how we would do it exactly, when that's what we're going to find out in the study. But we could develop, sell some lots at a higher price, maybe have some to, like, a community land trust type thing, maybe a parcel for, high density housing, and then maybe, all sorts of different kind of units, but where we have the control and we can plan this, that it allows a variety of livable dwelling units. And so, yeah, we are taking on some of the costs, but as Tor said, yeah, we can apply for grants and federal funding. But big picture is, I believe that the public has asked for this. I think it's very, very important. People can't find people to work, just one issue. People can't find places to live. I believe that, like you said, Stephen, that if we're going to do this, I think Amy's the person to lead it. I think she's, I've spoken with her and Mr. Leach a couple weeks ago about some of these things in detail. And because I wanted to know what we're going to be doing, because we need to move forward with housing development. And I was very pleasantly surprised with the vision that they have. And I know it's a big chunk. I also would like to point out that although, it says 750,000, of which 330,000 will come from the bench lands. We, have that in a fund we could use to offset that cost as well. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I just have a question. So it was with regards to identifying large areas that we could study. And then 3 were mentioned. I don't know if those have been narrowed down, but there was a question about the state owned and what is the likelihood if we study it that they're going to give that to us. So I know that you've probably had these conversations in your head. Just bring me up to speed. How likely, what does that process look like? And I know that the recommendation must have been, let's keep the 3 parcels. Here's why. But what would the cost estimate be? I heard that if we contract for a big comprehensive study, we can include those. Would that bring the price down? What sort of negotiation would happen there?
So again, because we don't have the funding allocated from this, and so we don't have the direction of the assembly to move forward, the details are still, conceptual at this point. And, we need your direction to move forward and narrow in on those things. So I don't want to make it seem as though any particular parcels are, oh, we're absolutely doing these, it's locked in, we can't change anything, right? That's not the point that we're at right now. The Planning Commission had asked me before the end of the year in 2022 to provide sort of what do you think is just sort of the short list of what are our best opportunities. And so the areas that Mr. Christensen mentioned are the ones that I presented to the Planning Commission of, and I was just looking broadly at, where do we have city owned property or other government agencies that, we might be able to get land from that presents a large opportunity, areas that are close to town, roads and utilities, and have relatively flat topography. Those are just sort of the key things I was looking for. So we're not at the point of having an exhaustive list. You may have noted that we did include in our legislative priorities support for housing work, which include sort of alluded to this study, and also specifically, I believe, had some specific language regarding Indian River Valley. So whether or not it is our funding that covers the study for that land, I think is still to be determined. We want to work through our state support to see whether or not they would be willing to contribute financially to the project, or perhaps they want to move forward with land disposal, ahead of that, so that we do have the certainty that it's worth our time to study. So those are, I think, still questions to be answered. And if there is hesitancy from the part of the assembly to spend money studying land that we don't have, we can exclude it from the study. That is, I think that's appropriate if that's the concern from the assembly. So those things are not yet, I think, it's not a firm decision, and there's still lots of opportunities for us to shape that in a way that the assembly is more comfortable with.
I think there's a lot of potential here, and this is a very exciting to see temper resources of this scale. However, we have challenges beyond more than just housing. Yeah, that can be a good core here, but more of a comprehensive citywide, how do we do this plan when we're looking at, our emergency evacuation routes and all of these things. Like, we have danger from mountains coming down and you have to go one direction, or if the water comes in, you need to go the other direction. So having a single road that starts at one end, goes through town and goes the other end is really limiting. And I like this push. Housing is a big deal. However, there's other things that I think if we're looking at this scale of finance, we should consider a bigger just master plan idea for this town.
I want to address that real quick. We
Yeah.
actually just were awarded a Safe Streets for All grant 2 days ago for $550,000 with a $150,000 match that we applied for. So we have a $700,000 grant right now to address the bigger master planning for the roads.
Great. Thank you. Mhm. So this would be a great addition to that.
I could just address that to the master plan. I've been on for 4 years and we talk about plans and they come and go, but we've had a master plan performed or completed. We had a strategic plan. In my mind, this is just my mentality. I know it's a little scary because it's a big chunk of change, but this is actually, we have the plans and now it's time to start executing these plans. That's just my thought.
I guess I'll go, oh,
Oh, go ahead.
all right. So, it was part of my campaign of opening up land and housing and all that. So obviously I definitely support this. I guess I do have a couple comments on it though, is I also don't feel real comfortable about putting money and time into land that we don't have. I'd be more willing to look at that if we had some sort of nod from the state that they would be willing to sell, trade, whatever, it's got to happen. So I think right now I'd like to not throw assets that way until we had something figured out. And then along the lines of why us, why not private industry? It sounds like we do have a few different areas that we're interested in and want to look into. Well, why can't we do both? Why can't the city choose one section to study and develop and have control over that land, but also take one of the other areas identified and sell it to private industry? Let them have a go at it. Yeah, they're probably going to develop larger lots and more whatever, I don't know, kind of the standard lot that I guess our developers have been doing, but there's still a massive demand for that. So that I don't view that as a terrible thing either. And then we have two entities trying to develop stuff for the public, which I hear over and over and over is what Sitkans want. So.
Can I answer?
Oh, yeah. No, please.
So I think part of the concern is, how do you know which ones to study on your own versus to dispose of if you don't fully understand the opportunity set of both lands, right? If we want to retain city lands where we more tightly control the development for an outcome, i.e., affordable housing, until you have more detailed information about the land and the opportunity set, you might be giving away your better opportunity for affordable housing, whereas you should have given the other one away that is going to be more suited to larger lots and better, the more private development. So I would be concerned about advancing a disposal of a large part of city land without better understanding its opportunity cost first. And the other benefit of including both in a study is you could still then decide to dispose of one of the areas you've studied. You'd be able to recoup the costs that you put in on the study as a part of the sale. And you also might have some more guiding information about what type of zoning you might want to attach to that land before it sells, any sales agreement stipulations that you might want to add. And there's also some value add to that sale because we know how much of the land is actually truly developable as well. And that could actually increase the value of that sale. So I think that even if the assembly does decide to go down the route of selling off any of these large areas for private development, there's still benefit in doing the study work on it first.
Okay, yeah, no, I could definitely support that and see the benefits of studying all the land, before we either develop or private industry develops. So no, I can support studying all parcels, but I do have that one hesitation towards state owned. But other than that, I'm in full support. Like I said, I've been hearing it over and over and over. We need land opened up. We need land opened up. I think the market really showed that this year. We had a bit of a housing shortage. So I think this is years down the road, but we need to get the ball rolling. So this is the start.
So Amy, can I ask you a question? So a couple members have mentioned, just three of them, rightfully so, understandably so, concerns about spending money studying land we don't. That's a very extremely valid question. So why did you want to, can you tell us the selling point of doing that at this?
I don't have a strong steer on whether or not we want to do that yet. And I think that the assembly's concerns are completely valid.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's kind of a matter of, if Indian River drops out, are there other things that then drop in. I think we might want to have that flexibility. By kind of including the entire study at this point, that also gives us a little time between now and July 1st, when these funds become available, to be having these conversations with the state about how much or to what level they might want to participate, and what they may be able to provide, what level of certainty we might have. So again, casting a wide net to start. But if there's opportunities to get the state support for state lands, or to switch gears onto other lands that are municipally owned, or to just narrow in our set and not spend all of this money. Those are all perfectly acceptable outcomes, I think.
So do you think you could get a general authorization or okay for that area, but contingent upon some sort of confirmation from the state, with a very good degree of certainty that they would be willing to do something like that?
I think
Potentially,
what
it's
you
hard
just
to.
asked for is impossible.
Yeah,
A good degree of certainty for the state to give us land.
In 6, in 6 months, we're not going to have a land disposal in 6 months. We can say that.
Okay.
But again, I think the message is fairly unified here. I completely understand that concern. And, I think that's helpful for us to then take back to the state to say, we are willing to invest the staff resources in doing this study, in managing the contract. And we're interested enough, where can you meet us? So that some level, whatever kind of level of assurance or participation that they can provide us, that we can bring back to you, helps us have those conversations.
Well, that's my point, is not saying we have to have that study in the area, but the state knowing that we're very interested in it and we're ready to put money, obviously not right now, but we would be willing possibly to put money towards actually doing something with it than just saying we want it. I think that would help advance the cause of getting that.
And this isn't happening in a vacuum. I mean, there's been certain elected officials at the state level have expressed an interest in doing this. So, it's not like this is not going to be a surprise to anybody at the state.
Walk me through your best practices process on this. Would there be a public input period for this study? What would you think, or would it just be the engineering side of things?
So that I would think that there would be public engagement on the areas to be studied. I think that's kind of the most prime piece, where public engagement would be very helpful. I do think to some extent we need to look at where is it most feasible to put housing, as opposed to necessarily where we want housing.
Okay.
And so there does have to be that kind of lens on it as well, of there are going to be certain areas that are going to be more suitable than others. And we have good indicators for that. But I would think that would be the primary kind of public input on the front end. But the rest of it, I think, would be more kind of the technical analysis managed through the contract.
And this is for the appropriation of fiscal year 24. Would it be done by June of 24? Or would it extend past? Would this be a 12-month, 18-month study?
It's a capital appropriation, so it can
Okay.
carry over year
It
to
can
year.
carry over. Okay. So not all 750 has to be spent. It's just that earmark. Perfect.
If I can, I guess I view this as an investment, and no investment comes without risks. So, I mean, the risk is we spend a lot of money, we find out nothing's developable. I mean, worst case scenario. But right now we don't know. We don't know what's developable. We don't know what's available. And I think for the Indian River, if the state wants to pay to join our exploration, pay for that segment of the thing, I'm all in favor of doing that. But I'm with Stephen about not spending our money on it. But if we don't invest, we don't know. So I'm in favor of investing in this one to find out what's available, what we can do with it, what makes sense, and because right now these are, we could put 175 houses above the high school. We may find you can put 25. you know, so until we figure that out, we don't really know what we have.
Well, Amy, I think you thoroughly defended your thesis and now you can have a PhD. Anything else on this item before we continue on? Do we have any other on goal 1 before we move on? Any other thoughts on that? And when I say move on, I mean take a bathroom break. John, you said you had more thoughts on goal 1 or?
Yeah, well, did we want to revisit each of these items? Or are you talking about the whole, just this whole page, goal 1 in general?
Well, if anybody has any concerns that they'd like to pull out or talk about, we're welcome to do that. Other than that, I don't see a need to go line by line.
Well,
Okay.
after the bathroom break, I would like to at least talk a little bit about the code enforcement officer.
Yeah, and I would love, I want to explain both of these next ones. So if we want to do that after a break, I'm
Perfect. Let's do
Totally
that
fine
then.
with that.
Thank you. All right, well, we are all seated. We probably will not be going till 2 AM tonight, but I mean, with the motion, we might be able to do that. All right, so we are back on goal one. John, you said you wanted to talk about your code officer and a couple other items there.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'll talk about all of them. And really quick here too, I just want to reiterate that we're not looking for final detailed decision points on this yet. We're looking for the guidance to put the draft budget together. None of this stuff is set in stone when we leave here tonight. We are coming back with a draft budget, and then it can still change. Then the idea is just get as much guidance as we can to help build the draft. But I'll go quickly through everything that's here and then kind of open it up for questions if they have any. I'll hit the nonprofit support first. None of the things on this list are new. But as Melissa said at the beginning, everything up here is a new initiative or something that is outside our core services. You know, we put this up here every single year and look for that, yes, continue it or don't continue. And the ones that fell in goal one was the $50,000 a year donation pool, we'll call it, when all the nonprofits make their applications and then they come up and we decide how much to grant to them. Sitka Historical Society, I believe it was 97,200 for last year. I put 100,000 on here this year. The Senior Center, $80,000. We have, I think we do some bus maintenance for them, building maintenance. A lot of this is in-kind support. The Ride, we give a $25,000 plus in-kind support every year for their work. And Sitka Trail Works is in the building at the Turnaround Complex. They complete maintenance on that building for us while they're in it, but they don't pay any utilities or property taxes to be there. So those again are in front of you here to either include or take out. And as far as the code enforcement goes, this one's complicated, but I'll try to distill it down as much as I can. The beginning of this conversation was no new FTEs, and that was a goal of mine. And I know the department heads heard it from me many times. So I hate to say it, but as the resource proposals came in and they said no new FTE, they immediately got moved to the no pile. But with the addition of FTEs last year, I've said we needed to just take a minute and evaluate on, did it get us anywhere? Do we have the capacity that we need now? And personally, I think with the addition of a person in planning, a person in buildings, and a person in the police department, specifically, you know, Amy's moved up. There's now a planner one and a planning manager there. Buildings, they got another plan reviewer. PD, they got an additional MSO. Since most code enforcement issues fall in either buildings, planning, or police, I believe we have the capacity now to do what some other communities do, where they more or less have a committee of those three groups within the city staff, you know, on whatever cycle. And then most of the compliance issues can be solved through letter writing campaigns. And then if we have to make visits, we make visits. But we've made some significant steps just without even having that code enforcement person hired now. Even in the sales tax and contracts world, you know, finance has done a great job with getting a lot of sales tax accounts in compliance. We have contract managers now in public works and in electric, and then we have a compliance officer in finance that helps with the lease and contracts. So I think we're doing good there. And the fact that we haven't even gotten a job description yet for the code enforcement officer and haven't really made a lot of moves, I think that was an easy one for me to be able to collapse that one and redirect that funding. I want to bring asset management completely under the administrator to make it more, we're growing that. I want to make it more of a citywide effort. And, you know, sorry, Michael, but I want to take his asset manager from him and put that throughout the entire city. Electric needs a lot of help. And if I can use that support to help electric out with the asset management world, that's great. But I can't leave Michael with the loss of a person. Right now he's got $150 million worth of capital projects that are actively going on with one municipal engineer and one project manager. So my hope was to collapse the code enforcement position, redirect the funds to move asset management full-time over to me, because we each pay for half the position now. And then get Michael, that second senior engineer that he used to have years ago. I know it's not going to be a net zero on this, but doing this, I'm able to get it done without bringing any more staff on board, because really it's the insurance and the benefits. Those are the things that cost us further down the road. But that's the intent of the cut position that you see here. Just trying to use that funding for some other areas that we need some work in. So hopefully I've explained it well enough there.
I do have one question regarding the FTEs. So we have 171 budgeted, but how many do we actually have working?
That's a very good question. We have a number of vacancies.
Okay, that's kind of what I was asking.
But they're not necessarily, it's not that the new positions are vacant. It's across the board, so.
Okay, yeah, I figured that's the way it was. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, okay.
And does that contribute to the 2 million or is that just tax money?
That's just the revenue side. So yes, our expenses will be down in some cases. And in some areas, if we're low on personnel, we rely more heavily on contractors. So there's not always a pure savings there. All right, so on,
Sorry, I
Yep.
had one right on, John, on Sitka Historical Society. So when they moved in their new location in Centennial Hall here, they came forward to the assembly and asked for the in-kind services that is in the budget right now. It's my recollection that they were supposed to come back to the assembly and continue to prove the need. Do I remember that correctly? And have they done that to you, or is that a process that we need to do in the very near future?
Good question. It's on the February 14th agenda. I've already met with the Historical Society. You are correct. The exemption for their utilities and for the property tax was effective May 1st, 2018, when they commenced the lease. It said in 24 months, they'd come back and revisit that with the assembly. And that 24-month timeline fell square in the middle of no in-person meetings and the middle of the pandemic. And it just, for higher priority items, it got pushed off. We own that. I don't want to put that on Sitka Historical Society at all. But I actually finished writing the memo about an hour before I came over here to have that on the February 14th agenda. And the assembly will at that point need to decide whether or not they still qualify for that community exemption and the exemption on utilities. But one of those things will require an ordinance. So it is coming forward at the next meeting.
Perfect, thank you. And I'll say that the assembly owns that as well, and not just you. I think it's timely for it to happen, but when we ask for something to come back for us, I think it's on us as well. So thank you.
and we'll certainly be listening, and whatever is decided on the February 14th meeting, that detail will go into our budget. So the total appropriations for goal 1 will be close to $900,000 in terms of what's new or, doesn't have an offsetting revenue. The impact is about $314,000. So goal 2, which goal 2 is around improving communications and strengthening relationships within the community and organization. The first item here is the record migration and digitization project. And that is $90,000 split between a number of areas. So some would be contract services, and that would be with Laserfiche, which is an existing vendor for all of our digital documents, and temporary personnel. You have Sarah here on this one, who can speak to it. It's important to note that the future cost, this is a one-time cost, around the effort, we already pay an ongoing subscription fee. So that's not included here. Oh, good.
Before Sarah starts, do you mind if I go first, or do you want to kick it off?
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm excited about this one, actually. I've talked to the assembly before about the record center that we have over at the old business center. Is that what it's called?
Ceiling Cove Business Center.
We spend a significant amount leasing space to hold paper records over there, and we need to get that stuff out of there to save us some money. We spend a significant amount of time in records requests that go through the clerk's office. We have multiple vaults in the city where we hold records in there. A lot of the stuff can and should be digitized. And that provides better disaster recovery too. If we don't have that stuff in buildings, it allows us, not only does it cut our costs down here, but it gives us more space in our own buildings too, and better use of the facilities. As part of our asset management program, one of the things is information governance and an information governance committee. And Sarah's part of that committee. This is to help meet that goal. Part of this digitization is, apparently it's something we've paid for a long time, and we haven't used the functions that are available in Laserfiche, but documents can now be scanned in. So we'll have the personnel that will assist with scanning the documents in, but then they're also trained on how to put metadata in there. So it's all searchable online electronically, and members of the public can now go and find their own records that they want. There's a portal open to them. So if they want to know about the Benchlands, they can type certain words in that are scanned into the document, and they'll be able to flip through that stuff and find it themselves. So it'll cut down on a lot of work in the clerk's office as well. So hopefully I didn't explain all of it. Did I miss anything, Sarah?
You did a great job. Well, I'm really excited about this project. This is something we have had the software since 2014, 2015. And, we had great plans of getting that software, and either the clerk's office or IT staff building out the framework for that software, and it did not happen. So about a year, well, I think this last year, I was in a conversation with CDI, who we purchased Laserfiche from, and I said, well, I really don't know exactly what we all have, where we're going with this, and yada, yada, yada. And we got this little gift that I got in my lap. Megan, she is a former clerk in Washington, and she works for CDI now, and was a records manager. And she said, Sarah, can I call you after this? And so she called me, and she's like, I understand what you're going through. And so we've worked together, and I feel so blessed to have that connection. We've kind of developed a one-year plan where she can set up, well, she and her team can set up the infrastructure, and then we can start scanning records and meet our goal of getting out of the record center, and then ultimately scanning the records that we have in boxes within City Hall as well into that portal, and then so the public can access those records, and staff as well. So we're really excited about it. Holly and Jess in the office, they've been working with our admin clerk files. And when they came on board about a year ago, I said, well, I'm going to try to tell you how Laserfiche works, but I really don't know. So we're going to figure it out together. And we've made huge strides in the last year. So we're really excited.
So Sarah, in your estimation, I think this one has been on the books for quite some time. I've known about it. I think we've made small steps forward, and we never quite get there. Is this one going to finalize it? Or
Yes.
is this one's
I'm
going to be
super
done?
excited. I finally feel like all of the pieces are in place to make it happen.
Okay, because we heard earlier about piecemealing things and
I
not
know,
getting it
but
done, and
it's really gonna happen.
I want to get it done.
I can tell you it is going to happen.
This is kind of like one of John's, from last year, where all right, if we give you we got to have this one done. So
we have plans to start July 10th. We are ready. We have a full
About-
week kickoff meeting if this when this is approved, we're ready to go. A whole week of meeting. Megan would come to Sitka. And we will be meeting with each department. And prior to that, we'll be kind of going through each department's retention schedule to figure out exactly what needs are. So we're prepped for that July start. We're ready to go.
Good, because I was going to ask why you're waiting so long. The new
Oh.
budget starts on the
Oh,
1st.
we're ready.
That's a 10 whole days. Thank you.
We are ready. Yeah.
So can I ask a quick question? I'm fully in support. I think it's awesome and it will save time and money in the long run. John said something, I'm gonna sound dumb here, but you're scanning, when you scan it in and then John said adding metadata to that. Does that mean, so like when you scan a PDF, it's just like basically an electronic blank piece of paper. You can't read it necessarily, but there's adding things that so that
But
they
you
can
can,
read it.
there's these, and I haven't done it, but Jess and Holly, they should be here to tell you how they've done it. There's little boxes you can put in, so it helps search. So somebody who's trying to search a document, they can,
Okay.
by putting in these little key pieces of information, it helps that
Helps
search
so they can actually search with-
functionality. Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. It's very awesome.
I heard the elimination of physical storage. What does that expense look like?
It's the annual cost is
It's about
15,000.
11 to 12,000 a year.
How much time do you think this will save you and the other clerks for having to physically search for public records requests and, you know, all the stupid things that I ask
I-
you?
What, no, I think over time, it's gonna be a significant, we're gonna have to eventually get there, get everybody's information in there, but I know the Ketchikan Gateway Borough, they have the portal and the clerks say the citizens are really happy with it. 'cause
So
they
we're
can
gonna
just-
end up saving money by not leasing space and save office
Yep.
staff time. So return on investment is probably not too terribly long. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
think
could
we
definitely support
looked at
this.
4 to 5 years, but
No, that's pretty good. So.
yeah. Yeah, we're really excited and I think the public, it'll increase the accessibility of records to the public. So
And I'd add that it's savings across the organization, not just the clerk's office. Legal spends a lot of time on public records, departments individually spend a lot of time as well.
So that shortens our
Yeah.
return on investment
Yeah.
even more. So yeah, no, this feels like kind of a, definitely a no brainer to me. So.
We can even add, I was excited about this one too, because we brought up legal. They can scan the records in and they can have a redacted version and a non-redacted version depending on who's accessing it. So we take away that step of a person asks for a record, but that record has to be reviewed and redacted. It'll already be redacted when it goes in there. And then when the public goes to pull that, it will already have that information there, but the people that need the full one will have access to that.
super exciting. I did a little happy dance when I got the phone. After I found Megan, I told John, I know I'm not supposed to do this, but I was so excited.
All right, so our next one is our annual support to Sitkans Against Family Violence. This is the same level as it has been. You'll notice there's a couple of these that fall in different strategic bins. In the past, we've presented them all together, but some of them are more appropriate in different areas. So our total appropriations this year for these items would be 140,000. New from prior year would just be the laser fiche, the record migration piece. That's 90,000. All right, and next we have sustainability. So this one is around aligning resources and financial and economic policies for a sustainable community. So the first item is this, we upped this appropriation last year around the building plan review services for the CERT hospital. Additional appropriation is expected for FY24. That need is there. This is one that's a net zero impact. The fees would cover it, but it is a significant increase from the prior year. The next item is supporting the Southeast Economic Development Association. This is a $7,000 increase from the prior year. It's been at 63,000 for a number of years. I believe it went down to, it was 90 and then it dropped down. So again, a very slight increase there. The next one is mine. So this is some funding to support me in moving forward the development of fiscal policies. So this is an effort that I've been working on to really nail down some policies that we can compile and approve that will help guide a lot of areas of government and really make sure that we're not, that we're staying within certain guideposts. And I don't have enough time to get these done. And some of these are also very nuanced and complicated, and seeking outside support, maybe even from our auditors on these who, our auditors already know us and know some of our nuances, because if we set debt levels at the wrong level, it could really put us in, appropriate debt limits at the wrong level. It could put us in a very bad position. So just making sure that we get those right and give me a little bit more resources to get them done. So here we have total new appropriations of 149,000. The increase from prior year on this item is 16,000. Next, we have goal 4, which is focused on infrastructure and really around planning and investing in sustainable infrastructure for future generations. So the first one is a zero cost. John mentioned it, and it's shifting that remaining 1/2 FTE from public works into administration to focus. I'm sorry. It's the 1/2 FTE, and then there's the asset management analyst who does a lot of GIS work, who would also move as he's supervised by the asset manager. So those 2 positions would move fully to administration from public works. To help offset the impact of pulling those resources from public works, which public works will, as part of the organization, still certainly have access to them, but not at the same level of support. So add in that additional engineering support. That position might, depending on the needs, this was, decided very recently. So the exact job description and position hasn't been nailed down, but this level of funding would probably be sufficient to cover it. Beyond that, we have additional contract support in public works. Part of this is it's just been very challenging. There's a lot of projects going on, and we haven't been able to fill the vacant engineering position that we have. And this is just to make sure some of those core tasks that impact the whole organization are able to be accomplished. The next item is a vehicle monitoring system. So this is around actually monitoring and tracking our vehicles, making sure they're being used appropriately and as efficiently as possible. So this one would be an annual cost going forward.
I want to add to that one. I'm approaching this from a couple different angles. I'll be very frank. I don't like it when I see city vehicles in the grocery store parking lot. It's not that I'm trying to be a watchdog here. But the bigger piece of this is asset management. Again, these are assets that belong to the city. We have requests for new vehicles coming forward, and we've always kind of looked at those at the central garage and what that department needs. And then you've got departments that are like this vehicle is an admin department vehicle, or this one's a electric department vehicle. And then when you look at it in a bigger picture, you find out that some vehicles in some departments are getting less than 2 tanks of gas for a full year. And there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to shift those assets somewhere else or trade assets to some of the higher use and lower use ones and kind of call it risk pooling for our vehicles when it's appropriate. Because obviously, unless they let me have a police car, I'm not going to go drive a police car around to go to meetings. But that's for visibility for the public too. I mean, when I get the complaints that, hey, there was a vehicle in the McDonald's drive-through, or I saw somebody dropping off their kids at a gymnastics event or something in a city vehicle, I want to be able to verify that stuff. And we'll have the trackers in there, and whether or not we put the trackers in, some of the vehicles now are just coming with that service available. You know, we have a Ford is our fleet vehicle provider, right? And some of the newer vehicles have that capability in there already, but we need to turn that on so we can manage those vehicles and plan maintenance and spread out the usage of them appropriately.
So I'll agree with you. City vehicles in parking lots, store parking lots on a Sunday, but everybody deserves to eat lunch too. I have to remember that when I drive by and see it. I don't disagree with this one at all. Two other considerations. Are we talking like graders and loaders that we're putting this on, or is this more of the personal use style vehicle?
This is more of the personal use fleet vehicles style stuff. We're not going to
Okay.
put them on heavy equipment.
And
I
have
wanna see a
we,
grader try to go through the McDonald's drive-through. I'd like to see that.
That might
have
happen in a
we
few months.
have we anticipated, it's kind of a harder one to say. I don't believe that there's widespread misuse of city vehicles, but do you anticipate any fuel savings from this? Or are we going to get some of this money back by less tanks of gas being burned through vehicles?
I can't say with certainty if there was any savings. I think it would be small. But I think public perception is very important here. We're gaining trust. That's one piece. But even if it's not gas, I'm able to track usage and move things around. So I think the savings would be more in the world of planning preventative maintenance better and sharing assets where we can to prevent buying vehicles when I'll say we quote unquote don't need them at the moment.
Okay, our next item, which John mentioned earlier, is the support of Sitka Trail Works. This one, we actually went back and forth between which goal it fell under, but I think we fell on goal 4. But that support of Sitka Trail Works. So we pay utilities for their building. And they also use that building, which is down in the turnaround, the old float plane turnaround by the skate park. And so in a way, this is, the appropriation is for the utilities, but we're also, there's no lease revenue coming in. This has been, has been the agreement for a very long time. We are working to get all of these documented, but that's what this item is.
Yeah, so this isn't a new cost. This is
No.
just putting a cost to what's been happening for 20 years.
Correct. And we have been, the utility support has been budgeted and hitting the recreation subdepartment under Public Works. So on this one, the total appropriations would be 284,000. The net new from the prior year is 276,000. And then our final goal, goal 5, service. CBS is recognized as being a great place to work and excellent service provider to the community. So the first resource is a new time tracking system for our staff. The one we have now is, it's extremely clunky, extremely inefficient. Right now, we have 4 different bargaining units, and they all have different, rules for, shift differentials and, when OT kicks in or when a certain kind of OT kicks in. We have to track that manually for each person. So this is a system that would allow us to put the rules into the system, allow us to make sure people are clocking in, when they're, actually at their desk. So it would, right now we don't have a time clock. People go in and enter their hours, and, some supervisors see when their staff come in, some don't. So there should be some efficiencies around here. The bulk of this is a one-time expense, and future subscription costs would be around $8,500 a year. We're already paying some on an annual basis for our existing. So it wouldn't be a net $8,500 a year. The next item is replacing our voting tabulators. So this would be $16,000, and this is just around ensuring that we have the correct equipment in place so that our voting process goes smoothly. The next item is, again, this one's mine. So working with the city right now has so many different vendors because we have so many, we do so many different things. So we have, we have different software for our harbors. We have different software for our utilities, our property tax, our sales tax. And while we can pay a few things online, we can't pay many online. So kind of a first step is really making sure our systems are working properly and starting to work toward a way that people can access things more online. We also tend to go very low budget. So some of these, we may never get to the point where we can pay harbor bills online, but we'd like to at least look into it. So that's what this one is about. And I don't know how far 15,000 will get us, but the goal is to at least get more information and hopefully get further along. And then the final item is training for accounting training for staff in the finance department. And this is really around succession planning. It's very, very hard to find trained finance staff. And we have, great people in the department that if we can get them more training, then we can make sure that they can move into jobs as we have vacancies within the department. So this one here, the total appropriations are 124,000, and that's the total impact or the total net cost as well.
So John, on here, $5,000 for training staff in the finance department. 100% agreeable on that. I think it can easily be said within a goal 5 of service that every department could use some additional training, whether it be customer service or anything along those lines. Are there any other departments at this time that you've identified that could strongly benefit from a reasonable amount of money being put towards training?
Well, I think there's always a benefit for more training. It's a matter of how much money we want to spend on it. But have I gone and identified which areas need it? No. This year, it was really focused on the supervisors, department heads to come forward and say, here's a resource proposal. This is what I need. But I think the first step would be, and this is part of the action plans, for the departments to come forward with formalized training plans on what they want to do on an annual basis. So I think not yet this year, but I think you might see that in the next 2 to possibly 3 budget cycles.
Okay, perfect. And then as part of this, I know it talks about succession training, but as part of this for the front counter staff so that they can more appropriately deal with situations that they encounter on a daily basis?
Absolutely.
Okay, I believe that to be a massively important so that they have the tools, skills, and abilities that they need to complete their job successfully.
Yes.
I had a couple of questions. My question with regards to that one is how many staff would benefit from the training? What's the number on that?
I don't know yet. It would be a number of our, staff who have less accounting training. So it would be the people who are in the more entry level jobs. And those, there's some areas in the finance department where you don't need accounting. So it would be those ones that would be the ones primarily benefiting.
And then I guess related to the voting tabulator, it says eventual future replacement. So I'm guessing that these are pretty sustainable over time.
So the ones that we currently have, we purchased in 2014, and the lifespan is about 8 to 10 years. This last election, we had a significant number of paper jams and things that just can create questioning in the public's eye. So I checked with some other municipalities. The state has the newer version, and most of my other colleagues have the new version as well. It's the ICP2. So rather than, my hope is I would feel more comfortable replacing them now rather than going a few more years and then having significant problems during the election.
So if we replace them now, the estimate would be about 8 to 10 years out, we'd have to replace them again. Okay.
Yes.
Can I add some information to the time tracking system? I know I didn't hear any questions on it, but I still want to at least throw the back of the napkin business case out here. Most of it is one-time expense. As Melissa said, our system is extremely clunky, hard to verify. But if the $8,500 a year recurring expense, if you were just to take the 1 hour that I have hard coded in my schedule right now to spend every 2 weeks to go through all the department head time cards and verify that everything's right. You take my fully loaded rate, that comes to about $2,000 a year of my time just to review time cards. Now multiply that times the number of other supervisors and department heads that have to do that for all of their staff. We would love to have that time back to focus on other things and maybe get us into the current century as well. When we're able to clock in on our computers or on our phones and fix errors immediately with the push of a button, that gets people back to work and less time sitting trying to figure out a time card.
All right, so our next steps is we will take feedback from today. We'll be working on our draft general fund budget. We anticipate getting that out around the 22nd of February. So you'll have a while. You'll have until March 2nd, which is our next meeting, to review that. And our next meeting around the budget will focus on enterprise funds and talking about any rate changes for anything that has rates. So it won't be some of our smaller funds that don't have rates.
Great, thank you, Melissa. Before we go on to the next item, I do want to briefly talk about one of the requests that was not approved that we got in our packet tonight. It's beneficial that the fire chief is here because it is his request for 3 FTE personnel. I think John Leach laid it out pretty well a while ago and said that public safety is one of the municipality's core services that we provide, and I believe that. I also believe that the fire hall is. They would argue that they're there now. I think that they're very close to a breaking point where more FTEs are going to be required. I'm not advocating for it on this year's process, but I wouldn't be surprised to see this request come again next year and then the year after that. I don't know if 3 is the number. That's beyond my scope, but I think we're going to continue to see this. So Chief, my request for you, keep us updated as the year goes on this. If you hit a point of critical mass, I would really like to know about it. I think the assembly would like to know about it, because if we're not being able to provide life-saving services to our citizens, I think at that instance, we failed them. So please, chief, just keep us informed as we go forward. I know you and your staff would love those 3 positions. Yeah, keep us informed. Thanks.
I would like to echo that. You know, I, in my day job, work at a regional EMS facility, and everywhere is having a hard time finding volunteers and keeping them. And I can say that I have the distinction of being a lifetime member now of the department. It's different now. And it used to be, I'm kind of aging out and with kids and everything, but you had to get down there at the beginning of the month and put your name to get a duty slot. I mean, if you didn't get there quickly, you weren't going to get one. And that's just not the case anymore. And it's not the case anywhere. And, you know, I have my radio on in the background and I hear any available engineers because we just don't have enough volunteers all the time. And honestly, the city, kind of joked for years when I was really was more active that when I stepped on an ambulance as an ALS, I was much more valuable to the city than I am up here because they got paid more. And part of the reason we get away with the fire department budget we do is because so much of it's volunteer work. And it's just harder and harder. And the amount of work that people have to go through to keep their certifications up has gone way up. So I am a little disappointed when they didn't make it through to us because I think we're going to be more and more behind the 8 ball on that.
I got a comment on that. I do agree that we need to, obviously provide the service and be kept in the loop on developments, but I will point out that we have added a position in the fire department the past couple of years. We had assistant chief and we added a new engineer. I don't know if there's any more that we added, but we have been adding. So let's take a break for a year and revisit next year.
Anything else from the assembly on our previous discussions? All right, seeing none, that'll bring us to our next item, which is a general wrap up. This item is on this agenda and will be on every agenda as we go through. So if you need to talk about anything on the budget process, this would be your time. So anything in the future, anything in the past, thoughts that you want to just throw out.
I'll just point out, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the meeting has gone very well. I just wanted to point out how impressed I am with the leadership team to putting this together and the staff who've helped make this happen. Tying everything to I'm sorry, I'm tired. Yeah, I'm very tired. It's late, but yes, tying everything to the strategic plan ideas or points or whatever you want to call them. I think it lays it out very well. And I think you've all done a very good job. So thank you.
Just real briefly, I was a while back was kind of contacted by the Homeless Coalition and the Community Land Trust, and they were interested in honestly some city support. And I told them to call John, and I don't know if they did, but I wouldn't be shocked if we see something before us from them. I'm not advocating or anything. I'm just reporting that they are looking for some support.
I do have one item on this one as we begin to build our budget. This one's a lower priority, but I think could build a lot of goodwill with citizens and be a distinct benefit for our citizens. So I'd like the assembly as we go forward to consider putting up some match money to get some lights at our new community playground. The reason I say that, number one, I am affected right now. I have a 3-year-old, so that's why it is in the forefront. That's why I'm aware of the issue. But there's plenty of days in the winter where it's dry outside, but it's very dark, and so you can't get the kids outside. So I don't think that the municipality should pay for that entirely. But if we could get some seed money to where maybe the community playground group could ramp back up, or like a group like Rotary or something like that could take our match money and run with it in order to do that. I don't know if it's even in the budget, John, if there's money for, I'll call it fun things like that. You know, I don't want to break the budget over that one, but just something for the assembly to consider to see if there's an appetite for some community wellness type projects like that, maybe even under Parks and Rec, or I don't know where it goes, but just a little thing of mine. If it happens, great. If it doesn't, I have no heartache about that either. So.
If you don't mind, this is obviously a new process for us. I really like these resource proposal forms, and as these ideas come up, I'm happy to provide that form. If there's any assembly member that has a strong feeling on something they want to do, I can help fill those out. I can help, you know, I'll need you all to tell me the story of what you're looking for so we can get it in front of this table. So I think there's an avenue to get there. Absolutely. And I already saw Melissa taking notes on it, so I'm sure we'll be talking about it again. So if those ideas come forward to me, I'll help you put that stuff together. And to answer Mr. Christensen's question, I have not been contacted by those groups yet. But I would like to point out, this is one of the areas that becomes extremely, extremely difficult for us, is the nonprofit support. And that's why it's always up there, because I'm looking at this from an aspect of fairness. And we have some that are hard coded and then others that have to compete. And I don't know the rules for that. So I need this table to tell me which ones do we want in there, and which ones do we want to come up here and make their case for a donation, because otherwise the subjectivity is left on us, and that's fine. But it creates a challenge. So I think there's probably an overhaul due, and I've heard some buzz about that, but I think there's probably an overhaul due for how we make these donations, and what are the rules behind it. That would be extremely helpful to all the staff.
Anything else on our wrap up item? Great, thank you. See that we would go bringing this to persons to be heard. Any public participation for any item on or off tonight's agenda, not to exceed 3 minutes.
Hi, Craig Warren. I know almost all of you know Dave Miller. I'd like you to keep him in your thoughts tomorrow. He is going through surgery down south. It's supposed to be not too awful complex, but for me, anytime you're working on the heart, it seems pretty complex. So I just want to put that on your radar. Think about him tomorrow and hope for the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment on or off tonight's agenda? Seeing none, that would bring us to adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Thank you to staff that took the time to show up this evening for our budget hearings. I do appreciate you.